Why are some homes in Colorado getting multiple offers and sold within a couple days versus others that sit on 200 plus days with no activity? In this video, I'm going to go over the Colorado housing market in 2026 and explain what's going on and how to navigate it, whether you're selling or buying a home. Let's get started. So, to kind of understand what's going on, we have to stop thinking of Colorado as a housing market as a whole. There are different parts of obviously Colorado and the Denver metro area, and different cities, and even more specific, different subdivisions that get a lot more activity than others. So, you might be discussing the housing market in the Denver metro area, and you might specifically be talking about one subdivision that's just on fire. It's getting a ton of offers, homes are selling very quickly. That could be the opposite case for just a subdivision down the street a few blocks. So it's really important to understand that when we talk about the Denver housing market, we have to get very specific to what market you are either buying or selling in, because one is definitely different than the other, and you can't lump them all into one category. So, since we talked about needing to be more hyper focused on specific subdivisions rather than calling it the Denver housing market, let's talk about the homes that are getting multiple offers that I'm having a hard time getting buyers into when there's a lot more competition. And that's specifically single family homes in the 400,000s, pretty much anywhere in the Denver metro area. I just had a buyer a couple weeks ago that we were hunting in Thornton and Brighton, and it actually was relatively tough. Any home that showed well in the mid 400s, even the higher 400s, was getting scooped up, multiple offers. We ended up getting him a house in Brighton, but again, it was competitive. There was multiple showings, and we definitely had to go over asking price. That is a market right now that is super easy to sell. If you are a seller in the 400Ks, even some lower 500Ks in certain subdivisions, you're probably going to have pretty good luck. As a buyer, you need to be aware of that and see if there's going to be multiple offers and plan your offer strategically so that you don't get into something too crazy. You don't want to overbid by too much. We see a lot of people get underwater on a house by making bad decisions. So you want to do what's fair and good, and obviously have it align with the appraisal. But those priced homes, you're definitely going to have a little bit more competition. So for my sellers out there, if you're thinking of selling in 2026, it is so important to do research now more than ever. And by you doing it, I mean, of course, your agent doing that and sitting down with you and going over all the data that's happening in your neighborhood. It is so important, way more than ever. We got lazy during COVID, and you could put any price tag you wanted on your house and it sold within minutes. Pricing didn't matter. And that actually got us into some trouble now, because people who did that and bought for a ridiculous amount over what they should have, now if they need to leave because of job or family situations, they're pretty much stuck in that house. They're upside down on equity and things like that. So we're no longer in those times. Research is really important again, and that's actually good for the housing market as a whole. It's not good when something's so one-sided. So before you go to sell, it's important to sit down and see what the market's doing. If you're following one of those neighborhoods that's getting sold quickly, and there's low inventory and they're selling within days, or whether you fall into the opposite category where there's oversaturation of inventory and there's a lot of price decreases. I have a lot of sellers, and it's a natural reaction to look at a similar home that's on the market to yours that's active, not under contract. And I have people, that see their similar house going for 500,000, and they're like, well, we should be at 500,000 because they are, which makes no sense. If that home has sat for 200 plus days and you follow their roadmap, you're going to end up in the same situation they are, and you're just going to sit stale, and you're going to end up having to do way more price reductions. So it's important to see not what's necessarily active on the market, although that does play a role. You want to see what's pending and under contract to see what your specific home should be priced at. By pricing it appropriately up front, you're actually going to get more money. When people sit on the market and they do price cut after price cut, and you'll see like $1,000, $2,000 in price cuts, which are insignificant price cuts. When you see that 10, 15 times, buyers understand that you're not having success. It reeks of desperation, and they're going to come in and go for the kill shot when they finally do offer. So it is best to price appropriately. I get the most for a house within the first 2 weeks, and that is another reason why it's important to price upfront, appropriately upfront, because within that 2 week period, it's a new listing. It's the excitement's there. You get the most showings. After 2 weeks, it seems to just kind of fizzle off for the most part, and that excitement wears off. People buy on emotion. So within that first 2 weeks, they don't know if there's going to be competition or not. So they tend to pay more for the house. As it sits 6 months for, 6 months on the market, what is the desperation for a buyer to buy at that point and pay full dollar? They know they can get it for a lot less. So pricing strategy is hugely important as a seller. So now let's talk about buying in this Denver housing market in 2026. This also takes some research. I always advise buyers that if you are, especially a first time home buyer or you're not familiar with some of the neighborhoods that you want to be in, I think it's always important to go out. In addition to obviously what you're going to do, which is look at houses on Zillow, Realtor.com, all these places, it's also important to go drive the neighborhoods and figure out where you want to be and what part of town you want to be in. Then at that point, when you start to get serious and look at homes, it's important to sit down with your agent and see what that market is doing. If you're in a neighborhood that you like that's getting premium dollar, you need to discuss the strategy that's going to get you that house without having to pay a ridiculous amount, hopefully. There's other strategies that we can build into contracts, like saying that you're only going to address major health and safety items on the inspection, things like that that sellers like. But you need to know what you're going into before you start making offers specific to that area. So if you are locked into a specific subdivision that gets premium dollars and bidding wars, you need to know that up front, and you need to allocate what your payments potentially going to be on those houses, especially if you need to go above asking price. Make sure that you're willing to even participate in bidding wars and things like that. But it is stressful enough to buy a home that you don't want to go in with the surprise factor. So you want to do your research with your agent as well. Sit down and discuss what that roadmap is to get you into the area you want to be in with the least amount of stress possible. Now, we talked about the housing market in the Denver metro area being pretty stable, some subdivisions going for more than others, some bidding wars, some homes sitting on the market longer than others. But what we haven't discussed yet is condos, and those are becoming a real concern, especially in the Denver metro area, but also US wide. And the reason for that is the HOA fees are getting out of control. And what you really need to know before you buy or sell a condo is what is going on with that HOA. They affect so much in the being able to sell or being able to buy that. Condos inherently are a riskier type of housing. That's why when you go for a loan on one, the interest rate's typically higher on a condo than it is in a detached single family home. And the reason for that is the risk factor. And most of that risk factor, like I said, is built in the HOA. So when you go in and you buy a condo, you may be at $250 a month for the HOA fee. But what you have to realize is a lot of things can change. The HOA can fall short on what they need for various things, insurance. They might have a mass claim, things like that. And those HOA reserves might fall short, and you could end up with a $450 a month HOA fee when you had budgeted for a $200 HOA fee. So condos make me very nervous. You have to do your due diligence or with the agent, of course, and making sure that there's no ongoing litigation with the HOA. Make sure there's no surprises that you can foresee at least that are going to happen to that HOA. Because let's say you buy one for 350,000, you get a good deal. The HOA is $250 a month. That's a good deal. Fast forward, you're in there for a few months and the HOA for some reason goes to 500 or something crazy. That is going to have a huge factor in your ability to sell. You're now marketing a house that's way more expensive to buyers, and that's going to hurt your chances of selling. If you own a condo, likewise, you need to also have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the HOA. If you see things start to go south, you really need to question maybe whether it's time to sell and get out before something bad happens with that HOA. At the point where it's announced and things are bad, what happens is a lot of homeowners go on the market all at once. It floods the condo area with oversaturation of inventory, and now you're in a super competitive environment that's going to be price decrease after price decrease. It also makes people nervous when they're looking online and see 10 condo units all of a sudden pop up in one little community. So be careful when you're entertaining buying a condo, and be careful when you're in a condo and monitoring what's going on. So, in conclusion, the Denver metro market is healthy and thriving. We haven't experienced any market collapses. We are in a definite high interest rate environment compared to what we were in, but it doesn't seem to be killing our market at all. Again, it is so important whether you're buying or selling to have somebody doing the absolute best research possible. Has to be hyper focused because, again, some communities are doing great and thriving, and just a few blocks down, they're hurting. So it's important to have an agent that's going to be hyper focused on research and knowing what playground you're in and how to appropriately attack that strategy to get you the best outcome. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to be a resource. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.